Okay, so a continuation of chapter 20. How then do we translate a subjunctive? As a word in and of itself, we know we can give this idea of a little bit of contingency, might, would, should. But how about if it appears in a sentence? More particularly, what if it appears in an independent clause or a dependent clause? So first of all, we're going to look at an independent clause. So that's a clause, a sentence that stands on its own, has a subject and a verb and pretty much a complete thought. We see it used in a sense of exhortation, or the idea of a hortatory sentence, the idea of prohibition, where you stop something, the idea of a question deliberatively, or a real strong no, emphatic negation, that's called. So if you use it as an exhortation, let's do something, hortatory, you say let us, and that appears if you see a subjunctive verb in an independent clause appear in the first person plural, because it needs to be an us, right? If you see it as a prohibition, if you want to translate it like that, do not or stop, it will appear in the aorist, even though you don't have to translate it past tense, with the use of the may. So the negation, since we're outside of the indicative mood, will always be indicated by may, not u. If you want to render it deliberatively, you will have this idea of shall we, because it's not certain, right? Because it's subjunctive, and so it's rendered as a question. And if it is emphatic, if u may, you will see then a subjunctive in its near distance, what shall I say, nearby, you will see a subjunctive and you will see the o may. Okay, but more often than not, will you see it used in a dependent clause, more frequently even as an adverb, though it can be used as a noun or an adjective as well. So that means that there is a part here that depends on the independent clause. So you have a carryover point, a connection point between the clauses that can be such that it's rendered as a purpose of something, and you will translate it so that words that you will see in addition to a verb in the subjunctive would be hina or hopas. Result, as a result of, you will again have hina. So sometimes in hina it's up to you to decide if it's purpose or result. Sometimes you see a relative pronoun being used in the vicinity of the subjunctive, whoever. Comparison, that's more when you use it as an adjective, so you give a comparative kind of feel by translating it as. Temporal is when you have a time indicator, when, then, until. Concession, so this idea of if this, then that. And then as a substantive, so stand in, if it takes the role of a subject or direct object. And that's kind of different as well, because we have gotten used to the fact that you recognize it by its endings in a noun. But it's kind of like when an article takes on the role of a subject, right? So apparently the subjunctive can do this too. So we see examples here of independent clauses, the let us, right? Beloveds, let us love one another. So you don't see a word for let us. All we see is agapomein. You see omein, so that's in the subjunctive. And all you see is these words, and you go, hey, but that's the first person plural, right? Omein et the uzi. So since you see that, you say, I'm going to translate that in a hortatory sort of way, because we have a subject, we have a verb, it's a complete thought, so it's an independent clause. Beloved, let us love one another. Here's a prohibition to not do something, so we expect it to see with a may. We also expect to see the verb as an aorist, and sure enough, there it is. May phoneuses. So you see it as an aorist, and so again, that works out. Do not murder, do not bear false witness. As a question, shall we? Okay, so you expect words there such as a form of interrogation. Who, what, so pote, t. And of course, you can have the double negative. Ooh, may, not at all, which you will see here. Kai ume knows. You will never know. Okay. And then it's used also with dependent clauses. And we're going to go over here to this book, where we will see it used here. Sometimes right here as a subject clause, whoever. So you see the host takes that place as a direct object. Do whatever, you see. So it takes the place of, and all of that with a subjunctive in the near vicinity. Can you pick out the subjunctive? That's why those rules apply. As that he sends out laborers. Why? Because the sending out, the ekbale, is in the subjunctive. Okay, it can also be used as an adverbial clause, because there's the word hos, as, and so on and so forth. So here we see the subject in order that, hina, because next we see labosin. So we see the subjunctive, result, hina, skotisthe. So we see another subjunctive, temporal, sense of time, when, poreu omai. So we see poreu omai, it's an opponent, right? But you see that subjunctive. Concession, even though, kan. We see a may, and sure enough, you see a te. So it's a subjunctive, okay? And the optative, we don't translate it too often because we don't have too many of them. But genoita, so something might happen from genomai. So it's an even lesser chance it might happen. Often used in some sort of polite forms or like in prayers. Okay, so we're also going to encounter it in conditional sentences now. We had already learned the first and second clauses, right? True and false, for which the logic was determined. Now we have a new logic. The logic is it's undetermined because the contingency is now built in, right? It can be possible or remote. Third class possible, that's with the subjunctive. And when it becomes really just kind of a toss-up, it becomes a fourth class, very remote, the chance. And so an optative is used. All right. So let's see how that works out. I'm shuffling here because I want to show you here what it looks like. So first class, determined. You often see the if form conjunction as an a, sometimes ayan. The protasis, the protasis, is in the indicative, where the apodosis can be anything in the indicative or subjunctive. As a reminder, the protasis is the part that starts with the if, the a, the apodosis has the part that brings on the contingency. Okay, so it's the second part. So going back here, the second one, second clause could be true or false, right? Because it's determined, but you could have it in present time or in past time. And we hadn't really looked at the past time because we, at the time, didn't have the tools for it. In the present, the protasis, the first part, the if part, could be in the imperfect, where the apodosis was in the past indicative. Now we see if it's in the past time, the protasis would be in the aorist or in the pluperfect, and then your apodosis in the past indicative, Now what about if the logic is undetermined? We don't know what's going to happen. Well, the third the third conditional clause with the subjunctive stands out because most often ean is used rather than a, and the protasis will be in the subjunctive, and then the apodosis could be any kind of indicative or even a future, and then for undetermined, which you really don't find in the New Testament much, it could be in the optative, the protasis, and then even an optative from there on. We really don't have any of them. Here is an example, I believe. There you go. In 1 Peter 3:14. There you have it. Ale kai paskoite. So you see that iota there, right? Diadika sunein makarioi. But even if you should suffer, because there's this remote chance that it might happen, for the sake of righteousness, and it's not a complete apodosis, you're blessed. So it's a remote chance that you might suffer for righteousness. But even if that happens, don't worry, you're still going to be blessed. All right? And that's the idea.